Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, and for the very first time, JP O'Connor, Laval Rocket Color Man on TSN 690. What's going on, my man?
Hey, Tony, how are you? Good to see you.
Very, very good. You know what? I have never, ever worn one of those in my life. My grandfather did.
Yeah.
My uncle did. I probably even have a cousin or two that did, but I never wore one.
You got to be, I think, 1930s Italian, or you got to be from a mob movie, or you got to be, I think you have to have a UK, Irish, or Scottish background like I do.
To the point that I never wore one, that I don't even know what it's called. What's it called?
A bunnet, or you could call it, a bunnet. I would say it's a bunnet. I think coming from the Scottish background that I've got, you call it a wee bunnet.
Oh, is that right, eh? I think Robert De Niro had one in The Godfather Part 2, eh? Wasn't he wearing one at one point?
He sure was. Absolutely.
Yeah. I like the way you wear it. You kind of wear it like Robert De Niro. It's the Sick Podcast, and it's brought to you by Cherry River Hard Seltzer. Only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives. Now available at Quebec grocery stores and at the beer store. We're talking Montreal Canadiens, and Pierre LeBrun says that based on what he's hearing, the first round of virtual interviews to interview, give or take, about 10 candidates, which started last week on Wednesday, are still not over. So here we are on Tuesday, 6 days later, and still not over. Are you surprised by that?
Well, think about the amount of candidates that they have in there, Tony. So, no, I'm not surprised that it's taking this long. I would think that they'll pare it down rather quickly afterwards. I'm sure that a lot of the candidates that they had in there will be some lip service, I think, and some interviews that they might not have necessarily wanted to have, but feel like they need to. And at the same time, it's important to hear what's out there. Maybe somebody comes in that you're not expecting to, blows your doors off. You're able to get some ideas, even if they're not the person who ends up getting the job, but you're able to get some ideas out of it. So I'm not surprised to see that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see in the next 5 or 6 days, once they get it pared down, take a deep breath, reevaluate, get a feel for who it is that they're looking at, maybe a little bit closer in the next round, and get on with it. So I think with the Canadian, the games that they have coming up, Tony, we know that they leave today for Boston. Yeah. They play tomorrow. And then because of the set of circumstances, they won't be back, I believe, until the 25th, which is after the Wild game. I would think at the tail end of that we would probably hear, at least it's in the finals if they haven't already announced a candidate.
Yeah, I'm kind of relieved that the first round of interviews aren't over yet because they haven't called me yet. And I was starting to wonder why. And now I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe there's still a chance that they call me tonight or tomorrow. But all kidding aside, when you said that they're probably going to interview somebody that wasn't initially on their list, I mean, one of the things that's out there is it all depends on who you speak to, because some people believe that Kent Hughes is not interested in the job. Other people believe that Hughes at some point will interview for the job if he hasn't already. But there's also this thing out there that Kent Hughes has recommended that Philip Lecavalier interview for the job. And Philip wasn't probably necessarily on the Canadiens' first list. And there you go. His name is out there, and maybe he's going to interview as well.
Well, Phil's been associated with the Hughes kind of family for a long time. We know that. Yeah. With Kent having represented his brother Vincent, and so he's been with them for ages. So he's certainly got the background. You and I have kind of mentioned this in the past, but one of the things that I think is very appealing about hiring an agent is with that, especially somebody of Kent Hughes' experience, it comes, the whole kind of trickle down. They have people working for them already who have vast experience with scouting, with contract comparables, all those kinds of things. So maybe, Tony, if they have in fact already interviewed Hughes, I tend to think that has probably been the case, or at least they've had the exploratory conversation. And
if I can add to that, JP, please, is that think of all the network that they have in terms of other agents, scouts who have watched the 04s play, watched the 05s play, watched the 06s play. And when the draft comes up, the amount of people they can reach out to and say, hey, how much information do you have on him? Hey, you know what, Kent, you and I work together. So I'll tell you, I watched this kid play, 17 games in this tournament and that tournament. All of a sudden, there's those relationships, and they can use a lot of those other agents and a lot of those other scouts. And they probably know all those, what are they called? Bird dogs, in the eyes in the sky and the arenas and stuff like that. So those are obviously,
Well, that's that
huge
network, isn't it?
advantages. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, and that's the
Yeah.
network that we're talking about that a lot of times comes along. Now, not that not that guys who are interviewing for the job who are kind of maybe more from the traditional hockey side wouldn't have that, but maybe just not as developed as you would expect an agency to have. And that's only fair. It's a completely different business. They're sitting on the other side of the table, but they still need to have that same kind of drop down menu, don't they?
One thing that I don't know that I'm trying to find out, and I will find out at some point here if somebody else doesn't find out before me, is once the first round of interviews are up, let's just say they're up today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're over today. They go to the second round. Like you said, the Canadians are going to be on the road between now and the 24th, get back on the 25th or whatever it is. All right.
Yep.
Will Jeff Molson be traveling with the team? Jeff Gordon, you would think, is going to be traveling with the team.
Yeah.
And Michael Anlauer and Bob Gainey are in on the interviews as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all in on them virtually for round one. Would Jeff Molson and Jeff Gordon be doing live in-person interviews, from the USA? Would Bob Gainey and Michael Anlauer be tapped in virtually? That's something that I think is very, very interesting. Let's just say Danny Briere is a candidate for round two.
Mm-hmm.
They can meet with Danny Briere, who's living in the United States. Let's just say Emily Castonguay is a candidate for round two.
Mm-hmm.
They can meet with Emily, who, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, but she is living in the United States right now. The same thing for, Matthew Darche, who obviously is a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Roberto Luongo, who's a member of the Florida Panthers. So there's round two could happen in person, you would think, right?
I would, yeah. And the reason I say that, Tony, or I agree with you there, is that we saw that was exactly the case with Jeff Gordon.
Yeah.
Jeff Molson jumped in a plane clearly and got down to New York or into the Boston area or wherever it was that they met.
Yeah.
That was stateside. So listen,
how about this? How about taking a step further? How about tonight when they arrive in Boston, Jeff Molson and Jeff Gordon meet with Kent Hughes or meet with him tomorrow afternoon on game day?
Entirely possible, isn't it? I mean, you can do so. I think when you're on the road, of course, there's always going to be, eyes and ears and phones that are taking pictures, so on and so forth. However, I think there's a little bit more discretion that can be maintained whenever you're on the road rather than here in Montreal with so many eyes and so much media coverage and everybody so anxious to hear who this new person is going to be for the Canadiens brass head moving forward. So
I'll put you in the spot here.
Go.
Let's just say the candidates are, and I'm going to try and get these right, okay, based on what we're hearing. Let's just say it's Kent Hughes.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's Philippe Lecavalier.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's Stéphane Quintal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say it's Patrick Roy. Let's just say it's Matthew Darche.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say it's Daniel Briere. Let's just say it's Roberto Luongo.
Yep.
Marc Denis, Émilie Castonguay, and Daniel Sauvageau. Let's just say those are the 10 candidates
that have been interviewed already.
That have been interviewed or are set to be interviewed in round one.
Yeah.
If round two goes from 10 to 5, in your opinion, who's left?
Okay. So, and I'm going to take this for granted that Kent Hughes is in on this, right? I personally think he's already out. That's my opinion. I personally think he's out. But to play the game, Hughes. I think by default, Lecavalier is out if Hughes is still in, okay? Because they're partners, right?
And if Hughes is out, would you put Lecavalier in?
I don't know if I could speak enough about Lecavalier. All right.
Okay.
I don't know enough about his background. Of course, I know that he's an agent. I know that he's been at it for a while.
Yeah.
Can he run a team? I don't know what the answer to that is. So if that's the case,
I would say that if Lecavalier is in, he would end up being a member of the organization, but he would not be the assistant. He would not be the general manager.
Right. Well, that's fair because we're only talking about GMs now. Yeah. In the same way, and I'm sure that we'll get to it at some point. But if we're talking about a GM strictly, if you want to throw assistant GMs in there, that's fine. We can have the discussion. But if you want to take it, so then I will say Kent Hughes is in. I will say that Émilie Castonguay is in. I would say that Marc Denis is in. Daniel Brière is in, and fifth is
Darsh.
Yeah, those would be my five.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm off too far off, and nor would I think I'd be too far off if everybody else, if you're doing a poll right now, I think we'd all be kind of give or take the same.
Marc Denis has become, out of all, I would say, if you're looking for a dark horse, he's become the popular dark horse over the last couple of days. I think he's gaining some steam.
He is. Listen, you speak about a guy there who has had over 10 years in the league, who is very respected in terms of his ability to break down games. Obviously he's a superb commentator, either in English, he could do it, and he does it in French. I think he could do it in English. I think he could do it in any language he wanted. He's tremendous. I think he still has a lot of connections. And to be perfectly frank with you, the amount of times that he's been around Marc Bergevin in the last, 10 years, give or take, is massive. And I think that there's a certain osmosis there. There's the conversations that players have, ex-players, general managers, they're still players. These guys still know lots of the same people. And I think that there's something there to that. And, Marc has had a relationship, obviously, with the Saguenay and Chicoutimi, on a business level. Of course it's different. The NHL and the Q is just not the same animal. We know that. There's nothing surprising there. But I think that if you were going to have the amount of people that you have in there right now, who I happen to think, maybe with the exception of Hughes, and even with Hughes, I think they're all underqualified. I don't think any of them are qualified to do the job perfectly right now. Then I think he's in. He's the guy that I would have picked as a dark horse as well.
All right. You can go to sportbuzzshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and our sick merchandise as well. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of our items. All right. Okay. Interesting article earlier today, by the way. I don't know if you had a chance to see it.
Yeah.
Alexander Pratt of La Presse newspaper wrote an article regarding NHLers under the age of 23, so between 18 to 22, and that more players in the past used to produce more of these 18 to 22 than now. Because as of today, there's only 2 under 23s in the National Hockey League that are among the top 50 point getters in the league.
Yeah.
Jason Robertson of Dallas comes in at number 43, and Lucas Raymond of Detroit comes in at number 47. Jack Fraser, who does some analytics for EP Ringside, he weighed in as well and showed a graph basically reinforcing that, and said that the numbers right now are at an all-time low in terms of young players putting up big numbers. And Lafreniere is not putting up the numbers he probably would have wanted to. Neither is Kakko, and the list goes on and on. And one of the people that Alexander Pratt spoke with regarding this issue is none other than Executive Vice President of Hockey Ops for the Montreal Canadiens, Jeff Gordon. And we haven't heard a lot from Jeff. But JP, before I tell you what Jeff said, and I don't know if you had a chance to read the article. Did you by chance?
No, I haven't had a chance yet. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm happy about that, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Before I tell you what Jeff Gordon said, if I were to ask you, JP, why do you think there are less under 23s in the top 50 than there ever have been in the last 50 years or so, or whatever it is, in terms of production? What would you say?
Oh, I would think that I'll give you a couple of reasons. I'll give you one on ice right now, and I think that it's structure. I think that everything right now in the NHL is almost become like the NFL in college football, where it is so broken down. If you were to look at even 15, 20 years ago, the third and the fourth line guys, not that they were the way that it was maybe in the 80s or the late 70s, but I think that even 20 years ago, when I was still playing, the third or fourth line guys now are much, much better players. They're much more structured. They know exactly what's going on in the ice. They know what they need to do. They know exactly what they need to do in order to combat the high-end players and the ability to score. So I think that might have something to do with it on ice. The second thing that I would say, Tony, would and it's something that I didn't think of until I spoke to some of the guys at the rinks that I speak to regularly. And the other thing that got brought up was COVID. And I thought that COVID was really interesting because even if you look at a guy like, say, Caden Goulet, who last year got injured when he was in the WHL, and played a couple of games in Laval at the beginning of last season after an injury at the beginning of the season. You have these guys who are really good caliber players who have clearly good careers and impressive careers ahead of them. However, they've barely played any games, so they don't have a lot of mileage under them, and that kind of that fine tuning that you'd expect even at a young age isn't quite there, and therefore those points aren't falling. I would say right off the top of my head, those would be 2.
All right,
close?
So that's a very good. Am
I getting cut off?
No, you're very close. As a matter of fact, you're bang on. Because what Jeff Gordon said in no specific order was, he talked about COVID, and he said that because of COVID, players have played less and less games over the last couple of years. Some leagues actually had to stop, pause, cancel, suspended, and the players weren't playing. So he said it halted their development. That's number one. Number two, he talked about the National Hockey League being, in his opinion, a better and faster league than ever before, making it a lot more difficult to just step into the league and be able to perform compared to previous years. He also talked about coaching, and he said that the coaching has become a lot more better, a lot more prepared, a lot more structured, a lot more defensive, a lot more detailed, a lot more oriented, and all of that. And he said that there used to be a time when a young player could break into the National Hockey League and they would think that if they scored goals, that they had a good season.
Yeah.
But now there's so many other details of their game that they have to work on that coaches are asking for that it doesn't necessarily translate to a good season anymore. So, and when he said that, I was thinking of Galchenyuk, right? When Galchenyuk broke into the league at 18 years of age, he thought that if he scored goals, he was going to be a contributor to the Canadiens. But his head coach, Michel Therrien, and his general manager, Marc Bergevin, they wanted him to become a 200-foot player. They wanted him to be, great in all three zones. They monitored his play without the puck and all that stuff. So the reason why I bring it up is that we haven't heard a lot from Jeff Gordon, right? Besides his introductory press conference.
Correct.
I think he did another interview on TV, and he did this interview with Alexander Pratt. It shows a very cerebral Gordon, and it gives you an idea of how he sees things. And he also talked about the players that are performing are the Makars of this world, who the Kirill Kaprizovs of this world, who came into the National Hockey League after, age 21 or later, had played a lot of games before getting there. And it leads me to believe that this is Jeff Gordon. And even if the Canadiens draft top 3 in 2022 and draft top 5 in 2023, unless they draft a phenom, a generational player like a Connor Bedard in 2023, I don't think Jeff Gordon is going to rush any player into the National Hockey League after what he just told Alexander Pratt.
No, hopefully that's the case. I agree with you. You look at a kid like Makar who played at UMass and who stepped out of that program. Now, there's always going to be exceptional players, guys with tremendous talent who are able to step in. And you can't just look at Connor McDavid or Makar or McKinnon or those types of guys. You can't just look at those guys. Or if you do, you do in fact recognize that amount of talent is what is required. Just raw talent is what's going to get you through. As soon as you said Galchenyuk, it made me think of Galchenyuk sitting off that flank on the right-hand side, firing one-timers in.
Yeah.
And the season was all but out of reach. I don't know. I'm sure you remember this.
When he scored 30.
When he scored 30. Exactly.
Yeah. Him and Pacioretty.
And he pots that 30th goal, and hey, there you go. He's and then it makes me think of Caufield. Now, here's the difference, okay? And this is also a bit of maturation with me in watching the games and understanding what it is that perhaps teams are looking for, or maybe seeing this progression that Jeff Gordon is talking about. When I was watching Caufield Cole Caufield in the last couple of seasons, and particularly Tony during the development camp in Brossard.
Yeah.
I was stunned at the amount of times I saw Caufield in these gigantic spaces. How the hell did you get there? Certainly, somebody had to have fallen for you to get that open. What the hell is going on? And I think we saw it a little bit last year as well, especially in the playoffs. He'd find himself in these spots and just manage to hide. And then all of a sudden you realize, okay, the book is out on the kid. The people understand what it is that he likes to do. Okay. And,
Yes,
and there's ways to start closing him down. That brings in the coaching and the structure that you're talking
Correct.
about. And I think
he knows where to go and he knows how to get there.
Sure, of course. Yeah. But sometimes at the NHL level, maybe not at the American League and certainly not at the college level, but maybe there's a bit of cheat in that game. And it's not to finger point the kid to say you're cheating. It's not it at all. But for him to understand that in order to get to that spot, that there might be a little bit of cheat there that is going to potentially cost you if that play doesn't work out. You have to guys want to knock that out of the game as much as humanly possible while not taking away from what makes the kid so special. Right?
I got a great question lined up for you now.
Hit me.
Okay. Do you now try to change the kid's game when he has been the leading goal scorer of his league, especially of his team, at every level that he's ever played on? Or do you allow him to get away with a little bit of cheat? Now, we know, and the reason why I asked this question before you answer it is, there have been coaches that tried to change certain players' games. But the ones where I think it becomes very important is the centerman. Yzerman needed to change his game to win a cup. Modano needed to change his way to win a game to win a cup, and both of them needed to change their game to become better players. But that's centerman. Did they change Brett Hull's way of playing? Did they change Mike Bossy's way of playing? Like, do you do that with wingers? I'm not so sure you have to. And I'm not so sure I would.
So let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yzerman didn't need to change his game. Detroit needed Yzerman to change his game in order to win.
Correct.
Mike Modano was still going to be a Hall of Fame player.
100%.
Dallas needed him, or Minnesota needed him to change his game so that they could win.
Yeah. Both coaches went up to them and said, listen, for us to win a cup, you're going to have to make changes to your game.
Exactly. For you to
and
be
the players bought in. And the players bought in.
For sure. And give them credit. Absolutely. But I think with a guy like Steve Yzerman, what you saw was a guy who was putting up 100 plus points a year to a guy suddenly who wasn't, right?
Yep.
So what I would say is that, yes, there are certain ways that you can rein a kid in, like Caufield, without having to lock him down or handcuff him so that his numbers are coming down, because you can't handcuff a guy like that because other guys can't put up those numbers. If you have a guy who's going to score 35 goals a year, or maybe in Caufield's case, once he sorts it out, who knows? Sky's the limit for him because he can deliver it so well already as an NHL caliber shot. I don't see how you can put your thumb down on the kid and say, this is how you have to play and figure it out. Otherwise, you're not going to play. It doesn't work that way. So my suggestion, Tony, would be, if that's the case, my suggestion would be, if he's going to ride alongside with Suzuki, then find somebody else to do the heavy lifting. Find somebody else to be the defensively responsible person.
Man, I love what you're
saying. So
saying.
that you can have, because it works in other sports. So why wouldn't it be able to work in hockey? If you can have a little bit of cheat so that a guy can get loose, a guy can take advantage of that shot, and you have a centerman who's able to do the 200 feet, as it appears that Suzuki is willing to do, then let's get somebody else in on the other side.
I love what you're selling. And I've said this before. Stéphane Richer told me that at one point, Guy Carbonneau or Bob Gainey, Larry Robinson, I don't remember who it was, but somebody or one of the two or one of the three went up to the coach and said, hey, you know what? Let the kid be. Let him be. And we're going to do the heavy lifting for him. Let's not change his game.
No.
And he scored over 50 goals twice in a 3-year span.
Yep.
And if they would have changed his game, he wouldn't be able to do that. And so I love what you're selling. I think every team is allowed to have one guy, one player that has that gift that can score goals, and you let them be. And I'm worried that it's not going to happen here for Caufield, because already we're hearing a lot of people looking at his defensive game and his turnovers and his battles and his 200 foot and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I've always wanted him in Laval, and just let him go and let him score, let him shoot and let him score. Let him build up all his confidence and let him come here and let him play the exact same way. And if he's going to be a top 6 in Laval, if he's going to be a first-line player, let him be a top 6 in Montreal. And I don't like seeing him on a third line. And I know it sounds kind of bad, but I hope they send him to Laval soon. And in the meantime, he might break out here, and that would be great. I mean, there would be no complaints because I wanted to see him do well, but 1 goal in 26 games, I think, is telling. I'd send them back to Laval, and I'd watch them light it up.
So let me ask you this here, because I think you just answered your own question.
Yeah.
If Caufield, right now was sitting on 12 goals, is anybody caring about his defense?
No.
It's the fact that he's gotten off to a bad start. That is what the issue is. Last year when he came in at the beginning of the playoffs and things weren't working, right? And the goals weren't coming. And then all of a sudden it clicked. Nobody else was talking about the fact that he was maybe a little bit lax in his own zone, or that guys were beating him off the wall. Nobody was caring about that. So if he's sitting on 12 goals right now, then I don't think anybody's talking about the fact that he's a minus player, or that, people are throwing advanced statistics at you because of opportunities that are had against the line. I don't think it happens.
By the way, he admitted that during the layoff, he picked up the phone and he called Jack Hughes, who he had a lot of success with at the U.S. National Development Program. And he said to Jack Hughes, Jack, you got off to a tough start and you struggled early on and stuff like that, and you're starting to find your game. And how did you deal with the adversity, and how did you deal with the downs, and how did you deal with the slumps, and what did you do to change it and stuff like that? And listen, I love that he did that, because obviously it shows that he cares, if you had any doubt, which I never did. But it also says to me that they need some people around the team, and Lord knows they have plenty of staffers. They need somebody around the team to be able to talk to some of these players, like a Caufield. If Caufield decided to reach out to Hughes, then that means he wants to talk about it, right?
Well, it sure does, but I think there's also a familiarity there, and there's guys who look at each other and know what it was been like with the U.S. National Development Team to be at the highest of high, and they have also seen each other when things are pretty bad. So whether that relationship exists on the Canadians with a young player like that and maybe an older player, I don't know what that relationship is. But I think that you would understand, Tony, if it was you sitting in that spot, then maybe you're calling Agnello, or you're calling one of your other boys that you grew up with, and you say, hey, what do you think about this? What have you done? You tell me. I need a little bit of help. And maybe you don't want to show that vulnerability. Perhaps maybe that's the case. But I would say to you that, for a guy like Caufield, that there's guys on this team who understand what it's like to go score goals and understand what it's like to go cold. Just take a look at Toffoli. Take a look at a guy like Anderson. Maybe, clearly, Tony, those guys don't have the high end, the highest mark that Caufield has in terms of his ability to score, but they certainly scored goals, and those guys can ride a hot hand. So I'm sure those discussions have been had, or at least I hope they would have.
Well, you know what? I called some of my buddies and I said, I want to drop a couple of pounds. What do I do? And half of them told me to stop eating or eat less, and the other half told me to get on the treadmill. So guess what?
What'd you do?
I checked out matrixhomefitness.ca. Cole Caufield said that during the break, he got on the bike quite a bit to make sure that he was keeping active. Build your own gym at home. Bring it home. Discover a quality workout in the comfort of your own home with matrixhomefitness.ca. I have their X75 treadmill with the XUR console, a 22-inch screen, JP. It is an absolute beauty. Hey, I want to end this off by letting everyone know that we have a little game going on in the Sick Podcast. It's called Eliminate One.
Okay.
It's a graph or a chart. I'm sure everyone's seen it by now. It's kind of like an NFL bracket type of thing. And
gotcha.
We have 9 candidates in there.
Yep.
And you can vote on the Sick Podcast's Instagram page or the Sick Podcast Facebook page or on the Sick Podcast Twitter account, and you can eliminate one for the Habs vacant GM job. And I can tell you that 5 days in, 5 candidates have been eliminated. I'm going to try and remember who they are here.
Yeah.
That Patrick Roy was the first one eliminated. I believe Stéphane Quintal was the second one eliminated.
All right.
I believe Danielle Sauvageau was third.
Okay.
I believe Emily Castonguay was fourth.
All right.
And I believe Daniel Briere was fifth. Those are the ones that have been eliminated. So I think right now left are Roberto Luongo, Kent Hughes, Matthew Darche, and Mark Denis. Or maybe I'm wrong and 6 of them have been eliminated. Okay. Anyway, I kind of forget what I ate yesterday, but Luongo is out today. So 6
He's out today.
have been eliminated.
That was my guy.
So there's only and then there were 3. There are 3 candidates left. Matthew Darche.
Yeah.
Mark Denis and Kent Hughes.
All right.
3 candidates left. So there you have it. So participate. It's a Sick Podcast voters poll. And once again, subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Sick Podcast. It's absolutely free. JP, this was a lot of fun. In 30 seconds, if you can, Jake Allen told members of the media a couple of days ago, hey, we should get back to winning habits, but get back to them so we prepare for next year and years to come. It already sounds like he's come to the reality that this team's not going to make the playoffs next year. And he's saying, you know what? Let's build for the future here in the way we play, in some of our work habits. If you're Dominic Ducharme, is this something that you want to hear
Absolutely.
one of your players say?
For sure, especially somebody like Jake Allen, who from the beginning of the season has told it straight, and who all the guys in that locker room realize has done a hell of a job for the Canadiens since coming on, especially with what's gone on with Price. So I think it does 2 things. First thing is it takes all the temperature out of the room. It shifts all the focus back onto the players, and it shifts the focus away from the coach. The second thing is that it refocuses the guys on trying to find short-term wins, little things that you can grasp and not necessarily turn the season around, but make it enjoyable to come to the rink. Because believe you me, when things are not going well and you have this much of a season left, it's not an easy proposition for players, despite the fact that they're making tons of bank, despite the fact that they've got a nice lifestyle, despite the fact that they fly all over the place in great planes and get treated really well. It is not easy. So with 45 plus games to go, they have to find things that they can turn into positive. So I think it's welcome. If I'm Dom Ducharme and I hear that, I think that's music to my ears.
JP, thanks so much. You know what? I wore the shirt today. Who's better than me? And now I know the answer. Him, JP O'Connor. Thanks for doing this, man. Let's talk to you again next time.
Take care of yourself. Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Join us on the Sick Podcast. The Habs are back Wednesday night in Boston. Cheers.